Hello and welcome to Excalcast. I'm Phil. I'm joined today by fellow co-workers at Excalibur, Alex Hum, Tamara, I forget your last name. I'm bad with last names. Ken Dacker, there we go. And
Leslie, woo!
There we go. Leslie, what's your last name?
Armstrong.
There we go.
Because I have strong arms.
Do you?
No.
Okay. So we're going off a stat that was published in the Toronto Star on September 19th. It's that 42.3% of young adults aged 20 to 29 are living with their parents still. And the big question is why? So one thought is that university is expensive. The other one is that culture is different. You know, for some cultures, immigrants, you know, different nationalities, they have different beliefs of when people should be moving out of their homes. And for others, it just boils down to when and if they decide to get married. Alex.
Well, I'm from Hong Kong, and in terms of when people move away from their parents, it's entirely different from it is here in Ontario. What I've noticed is that people are actually in kind of a rush to get out of their house to be independent. A lot of people are really eager to be financially stable on their own. In Hong Kong, that doesn't happen because rent is higher, and just in terms of Chinese culture, it's a little more usual to stick with the family. Tamara can add to that, I think.
Yeah. Well, I'm of Bangladeshi descent, and in South Asian families, it's really common to have even 3 or 4 generations living together under one roof. And for me personally, I don't see myself moving out of my home, away from my parents permanently until I get married. Like right now I'm living in the village, but that's just because it's really inconvenient for me to commute here from Scarborough, and that's really the only reason. Yeah. But
is this a choice that you are personally making or something that your parents want?
It's something that my parents want because, and my family in particular, I don't want to make any generalizations, but my parents want me close to them. They don't want to just toss me out on my own to fend for myself when they can help me out and take care of me. They just don't believe in that. And that would be the reason I'd be living at home after I graduate.
Do you have any siblings?
I do. I have a little sister.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
What about you, Leslie?
I suppose I'm kind of a strange case in this scenario. I think, to be honest, knowing my mother, she was an extremely independent woman. She moved out from Alberta when she was 19 years old and came to Toronto. She had no money. All she had was her credit card. And I guess all my life I've sort of been hearing this narrative of hers, of being independence. And I guess I always sort of looked up to that. But I know deep down, because of the experience she had a very bad relationship with her parents. And she moved out early because of that, and she felt sort of unwanted. And I think the tables sort of really turned because she never wanted to go back to that when she had kids. She wanted to make the opposite effect on us. She wanted us to know that we were always welcome at home. But I think it was sort of strange because she had 2 sort of ideas. One of which was be independent, and the other of which was, you're always welcome here. And so growing up with those 2 different ideas sort of had me really confused. And so I don't live at home. I live on my own. I pay for my own lodging and everything. I guess I could say that one of the reasons is that I live far. They live downtown, but that's not really, a lot of people commute, right? So I guess that's not really it. And I think part of it is wanting to be independent, but I know deep down that if I ever wanted to live at home again, my parents would welcome me with open arms.
Interesting. Yeah, I have to, I'm going to toss in my own commentary on this. Excuse my voice, I'm currently going through a cold.
As am I.
Yeah, I think it's going around.
I'm okay.
Quick cough. So to add in my own history to, living away from home, because I have done it, because of a RESP that my parents set up for me when I was little, I was able to live in residence and pay for school for a few years. But the money's run out, and now that I'm in my final year of university, I'm living back at home, and it's a huge shift back to to living under other people's rules and regulations. I mean, I don't have really, let's say, a curfew, and I'm not restricted to doing things, but in terms of scheduling, in terms of when I have people over, partying and work and school life, it's a completely different balance, not to mention that I now have to commute 45 minutes each way every day. So it is a huge shift, but I can tell you this, as soon as I have a proper paying job, I am out of there. Not because I hate my parents, just because I want that freedom again. If you've never had it, you don't know it, but once you've had it, it's so hard to go back. It's like having a cell phone, and then could you live without your cell phone now? Probably not. Or having a car and then having to give up your car. It's one of those things that is extremely hard to go back from.
Yeah, and I find I know exactly what you're talking about. I actually struggle with that sometimes because, like, I want to move back because life is so much easier when you're living with your parents. You don't have to worry about food or, like, pretty much don't have to worry about anything but paying your Metro Pass and a few things here and there. And so it's, like, the idea of moving back, I won't let myself do that.
Yeah.
And so, like, I'm holding on as long as I can.
See, for me, it's a completely different experience, and this is both related to the cultural difference, and I think just the fact that in Hong Kong, finances are a little different. For example, like rent is much, much higher to the point that it's actually unaffordable to be living on your own if you're still in your 20s. But for me, I'm not in any rush to move out. For example, Phil mentioned that once he can afford to, once he has a paying job, then he's out of there. But that's not my plan at all. In a couple of years' time, I'm hopefully going to be making much more money than I am now, and I'm still going to be at home. Like whether or not I can afford to be on my own, I think I'll be at home, and instead of paying for my rent, my money is going to be going towards my savings, right? Towards the future, towards what have you, like a marriage, a car, who knows? But I'm going to be saving that money instead of spending it my own way, especially if my parents are still going to be able to support me.
What about you, Jabara?
I have mixed feelings about living at home. I know that I will have to do it after I graduate, but I found that ever since I moved out, my relationship with my parents is much stronger. We're not as annoyed with each other all the time. Whenever I go home on the weekends, everything is great and dandy, and like we just enjoy each other's company. But I feel like in the summer when I was there for a few months, it was a little bit claustrophobic and frustrating to be living under someone else's rules. But in the economy and in the industry that we're trying to break into, which is journalism, it's not really realistic for me to be thinking about living on my own right after graduation, because we're not going to be making that much money.
Do you find that when you go back home, because you've been living on your own for a while, you actually have developed your ways? Like you go into your own little ways and you do your own little things that are so different from your parents. So when you go back home, you almost have authority. Like you feel like you have an authority to say, like, that is so fucked up. What do you do? What are you doing? You want to tell them what everything they're doing is wrong, because sometimes what they do is wrong. But like you can't really say that because it's almost like you're not even going to your parents' house anymore. It's weird. It's like you're going to your friend's house or something.
Yeah.
So strange.
Yeah. My parents have repeatedly said, like, I was home the last weekend and they were cleaning the house, and my dad was like, well, he's talking to my sister. He was like, she's kind of a guest now. Like, we can't really tell her to do stuff. Like, he was joking, but it kind of does feel like I don't really feel at home anymore.
I have to agree with that. It's when I lived at home and I had never lived away from home, doing things like laundry and dishes, those were things that the washing machine and the dishwasher sort of magically did on their own. I never really paid attention to those kind of things. But as soon as I moved out for a few years, I learned quite quickly how I could myself develop a routine that was comfortable for me for, okay, get laundry done on this day, do dishes at this time, how to cook my own meals, how to schedule my own life. And it worked great. I was fully sufficient. It worked perfectly for me for 3-4 years. But moving back home, it's so weird to run on other people's schedules, especially since I don't currently have my own car. I have to borrow the car from the parents or ask for a lift so I can get to the bus station, which just isn't right around the corner. It's extremely difficult to now plan my life around theirs in order to make it all work, because they get up at completely different times to me. I'm not saying I sleep in, but some mornings if I have to be at school for the wee hours of the morning to work at my other job, it's really difficult to get to the GO station to make it there on time if my parents need their cars.
Something that I wonder now, I think we sort of brushed over the topic of university being so expensive.
Yeah.
Do you think that if university was less expensive, that people would actually live on their own? Do you think it's more so the culture, or do you think it's more so the other expenses we now have to deal with?
I do think if it was cheaper, students may be more tempted to live away from home, because I actually read an interesting article further back. I don't remember where it was published, but the title was, "Why would I buy my own car when I can drive yours, Dad?" And or something along those lines. And it stands true. I mean, someone once told me, "Oh, if you can use someone else's car, don't bother buying your own because you'll save a lot of money." Yes, that's true, but it's like having a cell phone, right? You can use your parents' landline at the house or your parents' cell phone, but once you have your own, it's this, it's like you've unlocked this treasure chest of possibilities. You have all this new opportunity available to you. And the same thing goes for a car or living on your own. If things are cheaper, students are more tempted to spend their money on these kinds of things, because I don't know anybody who doesn't love having more freedom away from their parents. I don't know anybody at our age who says, "No, I'm going to go home tonight and I'm going to sit down and hang out with my parents." I don't know anybody who says that. So,
well, I think another relevant point, just backtracking a little bit, is the economy, right? I mean, people, if people could afford to move away from their parents, then they probably would, as Phil was just talking about. But university is getting, even if a university was less expensive, you would still have to take into account that these students who want to live on their own, if they want to be financially independent, they still have to get jobs. And at this age, when you're in like your early 20s, a lot of them are still entry level, right? Not much more than minimum wage. And also at the same time, there are a lot more people going into university. There's a lot more people who are going to be competing for those jobs, and a lot more people who are trying to also get into the limited spaces that there are available away from their parents, right? People are competing for places to rent out. All that bigger picture stuff is really relevant, and I think that by just talking about university being expensive, you're also neglecting the greater economy that surrounds that.
Another thing is I don't know if I'd necessarily like I said, for me, living away from home is just because it's more convenient, so that when I get home from school after a 10 o'clock class, I'm not dying and I can actually walk home in 5 minutes and work on an assignment and then go to bed and then be able to go to class in the morning. And I think I do that because I actually care about my grades, because university is such a huge investment. And I do it because university is so expensive. I have to live at home so that my money is not wasted and I can actually get good grades. That's my logic.
yeah. Anything else to add?
I think it's all, to me, I just think it's all really relative. Like I was saying before, the question I brought up of if university was more expensive or was less expensive, then would people actually be living on their own? But I think that, if there's something there that's convenient, you're going to go with the convenient option. And if there's something there that's not convenient, you're not going to go with it. So I think now that in our world we have so many conveniences that we can choose to rely on, we rely on them. And I think that's a big part of it.
Well, if you have any more questions or you want to add your comment, feel free to send a letter to the editor. We always welcome them. For Excalcast, I'm Phil Darlington.
Alex Hung.
Tamara Kandaker.
Leslie Legweek?
No.
No?
No.
Oh, Leslie Armstrong.
That's the one.